Welcome to More Than a Mission, a podcast where we explore what it looks like to discern God's calling to live an active, intentional life of sharing the gospel. Each week, we talk about the way God is moving in our lives, around the world, and everywhere in between, as well as how God's call to missions may apply to your life. Ready to explore your calling? What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the More Than a Mission podcast. My name is Micah Torgerson, and I'm joined, as always, by the actuary, Andrew Carlberg.
Wow, I think this is the first time I've been mentioned first. What's up, guys?
And the Iceman, Zaya Henderson.
What's up, guys?
We got another guest on the podcast tonight, Mr. Maui from Moana himself, Jose Esteban.
What's up, y'all?
Jose, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Zaya, you can thank Jose for that nickname. He gave it to me for you tonight.
I did. Nice.
Y'all, I'm running out of nicknames, and it's also just kind of realizing that absolutely no one is going to understand our nicknames except us and maybe some of our World Race Squad members. People probably just think we're crazy. All right. Before we jump into things tonight, I just want to take a quick minute to give a shout out to one of our partners here at More Than a Mission. We've recently partnered with a new Christian clothing brand called Victorious Co. Apparel. Victorious Co. Apparel is a Christian clothing brand based out of Canada, and their sole mission is to spread the gospel through Christ-centered clothing. So think T-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, all that good stuff. I even just got my shirt in the mail the other day. Super cool. It says, "Spirit lead me where my trust is without borders." Zaya and Andrew got a couple of shirts too. They're waiting on me to deliver them. But go check out Victorious Co. Find them on Instagram at victoriousco.apparel, and you'll find the link to their online store there as well. Use our code MISSION10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. That's MISSION10. All right, y'all, let's jump into the episode tonight. Andrew, what are we talking about tonight, man?
We were talking about trials tonight because we previously tried to record on a different topic, and the footage is magically gone. So we were not meant to talk about that topic, obviously. But yeah, we're talking about walking through trials. So
I was pretty upset after I lost that footage that we recorded the first time we tried to have Jose on the podcast. But I will say, it was less than a week after we recorded that Andrew, you and I went down to Florida with Jose. And after spending the weekend with him and having some conversations with him, it just became very clear that the Lord had something else for Jose to share on the podcast with us. So I can't say I'm mad that I lost that footage anymore. So yeah, after having some conversations with Jose, he has a very unique story that we would love for him to share, and we're thankful that he was willing to join us on the podcast tonight to share his story. So Jose, you want to tell us about your upbringing and some of the trials and struggles that you went through to get you where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So just kind of long story short, I ended up moving in with my grandparents at around the age of 12 and a half, just due to situations and circumstances and decisions that my mom made that just put me and my siblings just in a not safe environment. So we moved in with my grandparents. And when we moved in with them, I knew that we would be going to church. Church for them, ever since I can remember, has been a necessity, has been a must for them. And so I came in just having gone through that whole ordeal and whole situation with just a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. And the last thing I wanted to do was go to church. I had no desire to hear about this Jesus dude who, supposedly loved everyone and this, that, and whatnot. Because for me, I didn't see any of that, just with the situation that I was dealt. So going through that, just again, a lot of anger in that season. I truly feel like the Lord allowed my heart to be hardened. And so instead of seeking after things of Him, I just got into just all sorts of different things. I started partying, drinking, drugs, like all these different things at such a young age, that just took me down this path that the Lord obviously had not intended for me. And it just led to just poor decisions, and then just to finding myself in situations or circumstances in which you shouldn't be in, and then that led to just more anger. So it felt like this cycle um, doing things, and oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. This cycle of doing things and thinking that I was happy, and then realizing, that's not true happiness, and just all these different things. A lot of borrowed happiness, a lot of a false sense of like security and whatnot. And again, it just led to a lot of poor decisions and just situations that no one should really find themselves in. And then that all kind of led up to this one night. I was 17 or 18. It was D Now. If you've ever heard of D Now, it stands for Discipleship Now, like a weekend thing where you kind of go and we'll have you'll do like mission type work, and then you'll like listen to like a pastor speak and have worship and different things like that. And I didn't want to go. My grandparents, from the time I moved in till I was 18, forced me to go to church, which praise the Lord that they made me go. And so they made me go to this, and I was super frustrated, didn't want to be there. And then the pastor said something that I'll never forget. He said, the only thing that we have to offer Christ is the sin that makes it necessary for Him to die on the cross. Like what we think we bring to the table is like why God sent His Son to die for us. And so that kind of hit me, and I was like, wow, dang, I never really thought about that. I thought, I had so much to offer to this Jesus guy, like my humor, my wit, like just all these things that I thought, this is what I offer the Lord. And so I kind of sat there and was like, okay, what is this? And then the song Break Every Chain came on. And before this, I wasn't a crier or emotional just because I had grown up with hey, don't be emotional. Emotions are for girls type thing. And then I just, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just started bawling. And the thoughts of what I had done and the people that I had wronged and the choices that I've made just all hit me at once. And I felt I remember sitting there and I heard this voice of it's okay, I'm here. And I turned to my friend and I was like, are you talking to me? And he was like, no, dude, leave me alone. And I was like, okay, this is really weird. And so I went to my youth pastor, and he explained to me who Jesus was and who He said I was and what He had done for me and all these things that He has for me, that I hadn't really paid attention to before, because again, I feel like the Lord allowed my heart to be hardened in that season of life. And so that led to me understanding and grasping for the first time of who this Jesus guy was, and how regardless of the things that I've done, that He loves me. The situations in life that I felt were, just circumstance, were moments or specific times in life in which the Lord was allowing me to grow. He allows you to, and I can realize that now, is that He allows you to grow through those trials. I was reading through a devotional, an Elevation devotional actually, and the first day was the song Graves in the Gardens, and it talks about how we can see things as when we're being buried in these situations, and we think that the Lord is done with us, but we haven't actually been buried, but we've been planted. And so the Lord has been planting me in those situations and those trials throughout my life. And then He allowed me to see and understand that yes, that may have stunk and that may have been really hard, but because you've gone through this, you're going to be able to see and speak that hope into other people's lives. You're going to be able to tell them when they don't see a way, that there is a way, or when they don't see hope, that there is hope. Like, and his name is Jesus. And like, he is for you, so who can be against you? And it's just like, I love, like, even now, like, if you would have told me 5 or 6 years ago that Jose would be going on a mission trip to 11 different countries, or Jose would have been doing a podcast, or Jose would have worked at a camp, or different things like that, I would have told you, you are crazy. Like, you need to go to a mental asylum, because you obviously don't know who I am. But the Lord, in his like ultimate wisdom and all that, like, had like these plans for me through these trials. And I just love being able to see, like, in situations which I thought it was just like circumstance or just life, that like this was the Lord's sovereignty and who he is, like, guiding me through these situations so that I could speak that hope that was spoken into me and the hope that I saw through these situations. And it's awesome that we serve a God that allows us to be a part of that. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this I think I might have to y'all, but like, something that I learned and that the Lord is continually teaching me is that, like, he does not need me whatsoever. Like, he could do this world race, he could do like camp, speak hope into people, like, without me. And it honestly would probably be easier. But like, he allows me to be a part of what it is that he's doing in these people's lives and these students' lives, and allowing me to like speak that hope. And it's just mind-boggling to me that, like, I know who I am and I know the things that I've done, but that's not what Jesus sees. Like, that's not what God sees. He sees like a son that has been redeemed, that has been restored. And it's incredible, y'all.
Mm. That's awesome, man. It makes me think of 2 things. 1, passage, and then 2, kind of have a question for you. I mean, 2 Corinthians 1, I believe it is, that just like straight up tells us that like one of the primary reasons we walk through trials is to then be a source of hope and pointing people to the only source of hope in Jesus when they are walking through similar things. And so like what you shared, exactly that of like 2 Corinthians 1, like, and to just like be okay with that being like the idea of being refined, and then like getting to point other people to Jesus, like being okay with that being like the result of a trial, even if it's not something that like looks super like appetizing on the front end. And so my question for you then is, having like walked through those situations, how has it helped you, slash do you still struggle with like looking back on those trials that you walk through? How has it changed your viewpoint when you like enter into a new season of trial in life?
Yeah. So, I, for the longest time, didn't understand, like, I heard someone say, I can't remember his name, but he's like it's a privilege to like be able to go through, or it's a privilege for the Lord to entrust you with going through these seasons of life so that you're able to speak that hope into others. So for me, now, like, if I see a trial that I'm going through or something, like, yes, it's rough, but I know that the outcome, like the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess if you want to call it that, like, is so much more than what I'm going through. I think I think there is, I can't remember the scripture, but it refers to like what we go through is so insignificant to compare to like the glory that the Lord is going to get through that. And just knowing that, like, hey, like, I'm going through this right now, and yes, it stinks, but like, no, like at the end of this, like, is going to be something so much more great. I think of the song, There Is a Cloud by Elevation. And like, for the longest time, I didn't understand what that song meant. But like, here recently, like, you know, like when you think of like a cloud or like a storm, you think of rain. And like, rain can be like messy, rain can stink, and all that. Storms can be rough. But like, when you're being pounded with this rain, yes, like, you're being pounded with it. But like, when that rain stops, growing happens. Like, growth happens because of that rain, or because of the storm that brings the rain. And so I welcome, which might sound crazy, but like, I welcome like any types of trial that is going to make me lean so much more into the Lord. Because like, I had been praying this recently. Like I want to I want any type of thing that is in the way of me being completely obedient to the Lord to just be taken away. And I know that that could look like trials, like, friendships or like situations that we may not understand. But like, if me going through a trial means me leaning more into the Lord and being more obedient to Him, then I'm so for it. But yes, like it's still tough sometimes. But I think when you become a Christian and when you've gone through those things, like, hey, I'm going through a season of trials, but like seasons change. Like it isn't summer forever. It isn't autumn forever. It isn't winter forever. Like these seasons change. And because of this season that I'm going through, like something even better, like more better than I could have imagined, like is going to come because of that.
Yeah, that passage is 2 Corinthians 4:17.
Yes.
It tells us, for this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of one of my favorite passages to look at on trials is Daniel Daniel 3, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the furnace. And like, right, the whole story of they're thrown in this fire and then like the Lord joins them in the fire rather than removing them, and their mindset going in, they literally say like, even if He doesn't, like I will still praise. But like the coolest piece of that story for me, and something that I like truly wrestle with in my own life, like I would tell you, I think I'm somebody who like endures hardship and trial well, but the piece of that story that I think I can struggle with and really wrestle with is they come out of this furnace and it says they literally didn't even smell like smoke. And so like this call that we have as Christians to be so rooted in hope and joy that we like literally do not even smell of the thing that we are walking through. And so like, I think for me, that is something huge that I wrestle with, is like, yeah, I think I endure really well. But then the question is like, do I think that I'm enduring in a way that is so rooted in hope and joy that like someone on the outside looking in would not even smell the thing that I'm walking through?
Andrew just nailed it.
Preacher Andrew.
I'm definitely leaving this in, so everyone can see how great Andrew is. Literally leaves everyone without anything to say.
Yes, that is what this world needs.
Jose, I love hearing your story, man. Like hearing you go from someone who, like you've said, just absolutely hated God and like everything that was to Jesus, and to seeing how you are now. Like I never would have guessed it. Like I could never see it. Like Andrew was just saying with the literally like you couldn't smell their smoke. Like I never would have once guessed anything that you went through. So it's awesome to hear you tell your story. At what age did you move in with your parent or your grandparents?
When I was around 12 and a half.
Okay. And were you living with your parents before that?
So I was living with my mom. So I grew up without a dad. He left when I was around 2. So I grew up with a mom like till about the age of 11. Like you couldn't have asked for a better mother. Just situations and choices. One choice leads to another, and then that leads to like a snowball effect, and then you just I could have never imagined that ever would have happened. But like another part of like that is I have so many people who I share this with ask. Well, first off, they try to like give me sympathy, which is great and all, but like that's not what I'm looking for. Like I don't want any of that type thing. And then secondly, there are a lot of people are like, dang, well, would you change anything that has happened? And like my answer to that is like, absolutely not. Like, who am I, first off, to want to change what like the Lord set in motion type thing? And then who am I, like, if I feel like, if I'm not saying that the Lord wouldn't still have led me to the same spot, but like if I wouldn't have gone through that, or if I wouldn't have made these decisions or different things. Like I wouldn't be able to relate to students in a real way, and like a real ways that they're struggling nowadays, because there's just so much temptation, so much like you should do this, do that, whatnot, that I wouldn't be able to relate to, or be able to be like, yeah, I went through that, so I know what it's like, and I know the appeal of that, but I know the appeal of like having a relationship with the Lord, and like how much more that is. And so like something that I've learned and that I like try to put into practice each day is like, if you're going through a trial, like lean into that. Like don't run away from that. Like allow the Lord to like cultivate you and grow you, and prune you like in those trials. Because like you're going through that specific thing at that specific time for a reason. And like, again, it may stink, but know that like this too shall pass. Like, again, like that is the season of life. But yeah.
So I love that you touched on that, because as Christians, like, and having the faith that we have, it, when we're going through struggles or trials, we can have that mindset of like, God is using this for his good, and like he's building us up for something that we don't even know that we need to be prepared for. And we can like have that hope and joy about it, like Andrew was talking about. But now my question to you, Jose, is like, what was it like going through those things at that young age without having like your faith to fall back on? Because you weren't a Christian at that time, right?
No, it was hard, especially like the transition from going to my mom's house to my grandmother's house. A lot of like multiple nights of sitting up, like, what did I do type thing. Like, how can I make this better? And then that turned into just an unreal and an unhealthy amount of anger. Like, I think I was telling Andrew and Micah this when we were in Florida. Like, I used to be one of the angriest human beings on the planet. But now, like, you could kick me in the face and I probably wouldn't get upset. Like, I used to get so frustrated by the little things. And I think that all like leads back to just like the situation that I was going through. Just a lot of anger, a lot of like finding things to kind of fill that void or to take my mind off of that. And so I think that's where like the drinking and the drugs and the partying like came into place, is because like I didn't understand this until a couple months ago, but like when you do those things, you're borrowing happiness from tomorrow. And when you borrow something that you don't have from something you have not received, like you've got to keep borrowing. And so I was just borrowing happiness after happiness after happiness after happiness. And it was hard. Like it was just a repetitive cycle of, I'm going to do this to get my mind off of it. Whereas if I would have like not been a knucklehead and like leaned into what the Lord was doing for me, like not saying that the trial goes away immediately, but like the hope and peace and the grace and mercy that washes over you, like, is night and day difference. So it was hard. There were lots of nights where I was like, this isn't worth it. Like, I just want this to be over with. I want to be done type thing.
Gotcha. I love that you keep saying like your encouragement is for people to lean into their struggles, which like ties super well into what we actually heard from our guest on last week's podcast, Caleb Pauls. So Jose actually hasn't even heard this yet, so we'll spill the beans to you. But it was more directed towards like we were talking about the world race and leaning into the uncomfortability of what we're all about to experience and just embracing it and taking in as much as we can and learning from that. But I definitely think it applies to no matter where you are in life, and to just lean into these things that you may not want to be going through, but that God's putting you through. He also told us last week that like God's going to take you on a journey that you need to go on, and it's not necessarily or hardly ever something that you want to go, like a journey that you want to go on. But just having that hope and joy that this is exactly where you're supposed to be, and this is exactly what God has planned for you is just awesome. And I think it definitely applies here to trials and struggles too.
Yeah, I mean, that makes me think of two things. um, First, I think one of my like favorite things about I didn't really journal a ton early on in walking with Jesus, and it's probably like end of college that I started journaling, specifically like journaling prayer. And I think like one of the if you want to get a good laugh at yourself, like go look back at prayers you prayed like 4 years ago, and just like specifically like look at prayers about like person you were dating and see how that played out. But like it's just like crazy to look back at prayers that like I wrote about and prayed time after time after time, and how like just the Lord in his mercy was just like no, no, no. And like you think you want this so bad right now, but like the answer is no. And tend to like look back at it and just feel like, my goodness, I was just like such an idiot. Like thank God that like you and like that just the idea of the Holy Spirit interceding for us in prayer, but like that you chose your plan and not my plan. And then just like the hope that gives us in walking through like the uncertainty of now, of like thinking there might be something in life that like we really want to like be blessed with, yet like the answer continues to be no. Just be like, yeah, I remember 4 years ago when I like had this same mindset, and like looking back on it now, like I see what he brought was so much better. And then like similarly, just this idea of pressing into trial, one of my like favorite passages to talk about on this idea of just like not escaping trial. The idea of like to not have a mindset that is to just get out of the trial, right? And so like I think about the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, right? So the whole story comes like they finally get out after the plagues, and they're like, and then Pharaoh changes his mind, and so the Egyptians are chasing the Israelites, and they get to the edge of the Red Sea. The sea parts, and they cross it. But then when they get to the other side, God makes Moses turn back around and speak to the sea to collapse it. And so it's just this like really beautiful imagery of like to think if the Israelites' mindset was to just run away and escape and keep running. Like these Egyptians were in chariots. The second they got through the sea, they were going to catch up to them in a different season of life. That like our mindset in trials can't be to just escape something, because if we just escape the trial, that thing will catch us later on. But like what the Lord needs to do in that season is kill something that is like either a lie that you are believing or something that is like putting you in chains and bondage. Like he has to break that thing and kill that thing for you to actually walk in freedom, rather than living the rest of your life still being chased by this thing. And so like the question then becomes like, am I willing to actually press in and like not be content to just escape, but like truly say like, Lord, do not take me out of this season until you have like killed the thing that you needed to kill in me. And I think about like song lyrics and that too. Like, man, there's times in my life where I've questioned like, should I like literally be praying that like God brings trial into my life? And I'm like, I don't know. But like Oceans is a great example. Like the lines that are like, Spirit lead me where your trust is without borders. Like that is a bold prayer. And to like not sing that or pray that lightly, because like the Lord will respond to that. And like if we don't have a mindset that actually wants to press into that, that's like a risky prayer. The Lord's going to use it, but just like be aware of like what you're asking and seeking in that.
Yeah, dude, from all the times I've heard the story of like the Israelites escaping the Egyptians and the parting in the Red Sea, I don't know if I've ever heard like that after part of Moses like having to command the sea to go back. Like I don't know. Maybe I just always thought, as soon as they were out, God closed it back up like automatically, but that's such a good thing. Like you have to put an end to what you're going through before you start that next chapter.
Yeah. It's not the fun part of the story, so people
Yeah,
freeze
that's
on
true.
past it.
Always cool how we talk about trials and we see, or some people see it as a negative thing. But if you go back to Job, you see how like the whole interaction, how God said to like Satan, like, "Hey, have you considered my servant Job, blameless in all his ways?" And then Satan was like, "Oh, like, what if he did this to him? Then he would like curse you and die, pretty much." Like, but seeing how like God had to give Satan permission to do everything to Job, like just that thought process, saying that everything that we go through is something that God has allowed us to go through, and He knows that we have the victory or have victory over it.
I'm preaching on that on Sunday. I'll save you all the details. But the very short version of Job is read the very end. And Job talks about, after all of these chapters of complaining, he's like 4 chapters holding strong, 30 whatever chapters of him like failing and just listening to these things of his friends. And then like the Lord speaks and like calls out Job and is like, I will ask you a question and you will respond, which is terrifying. And like he then goes on this rant about like, where were you when I like fashioned the earth? Where were you when I put the stars in? Where, like, all of these questions. And Job's response after chapters, like 4 chapters of this, is finally like, Lord, I knew who you were, but I had never seen you. And that like I think there's a lot of truth to Job and the idea of being like faithful and being tested. But like the ultimate thing in that book is that like Job walked into this, like into his relationship with the Lord, but like purely had knowledge. He knew who God was, but he had never seen him, and he like didn't know his voice. And that like walking through all of that is what brought him to a point where he says, now I see you, and like now I know you. And like far more than the blessing that comes on the other side, the whole point of that book of the Bible is that like it took Job from somebody who just knew about God to somebody who knew God.
That's beautiful, man. Can't wait to hear it this weekend. For those listening, it's going to be after this happens, but we're all meeting up this weekend. So the 4 of us here on the podcast will be together, as well as some of our other World Race Squad members. So should be a good time. Andrew's bringing the word. Excited for that. All fantastic stuff, guys. I'm so glad that we were able to have this discussion and have Jose on to tell us a little bit about himself and his story. We're going to go ahead and close out this episode as we always do with the word of the week. So, Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you. Bring the word, man.
Yeah, the 3 of you can hear it for a second time because we recorded once and it's gone. But my word this week is from Luke 15, and it's probably a story that if you've been around church much, you have heard. Honestly, if you haven't been in church, you also might have heard it, just because it is used for like a lot of teaching in general. And it is the parable of the story of the prodigal son. And so the very brief outline of this story is that there are two sons of a like really wealthy, rich dad. And one son decides that he wants his inheritance now as like a teenager, takes his money, goes off to a far country, spends and wastes all of his money, sells himself into slavery because he's completely run out of money. And then the other son like stays at home, does what he's supposed to do. There's a ton you could speak into on the other son as well, but we don't got time for that right now. So the son, who is the prodigal son and goes away, gets to this point where he has sold himself into slavery because he's spent all of his inheritance and has nothing left. And in verse 16 of Luke 15, it tells us that this boy would have gladly filled his stomach with the pods that the pigs ate, but nobody gave him anything. And in my Bible, if I had it with me, I just moved recently, so I don't know where it is. Should probably figure that out. I have it like highlighted and underlined, and in the margin I have written in like all caps next to that verse, what mercy. Because like the Bible says that this boy would have been like overjoyed, content, glad, happy to have been eating like garbage with the pigs, but nobody gave him anything. And to just think about like he would have literally been completely okay living the rest of his life amongst pigs in a pig pen eating trash, like wallowing in this dirt and muck with the pigs, if they would have let him. And so just like relate that to me, like to think about how many years of my life I spent living, seeking out things that I thought could fill me that couldn't, like seeking my satisfaction and my success in sports, like relationships, all of these things that were empty, but like it wouldn't fill. And so the beauty of this story is that like the reason that that is mercy is because like think about what would have happened if they said yes to that boy and he got to live the rest of his life like that, just wallowing in the muck with the pigs eating trash. That like the greatest gift of mercy that God can give somebody who is far from him is to leave them in a place of emptiness and dissatisfaction, because like that just might be the thing that drives them out of the pig pen and like home to the Father's house. And like what a great tragedy, and even just like what an insult it would be to the plan and like the beautiful callings that the Lord has on your life if we could be like filled and content living in this just like muck with the pigs, like being filled by our sin. Like the beautiful thing is that he will leave us in a place of emptiness to drive us out of that and to drive us home. And I think like another piece of it is to just think about like he will not do it all for you. There is a piece of responsibility in it for you. And to think about like, I don't know, you could really breeze past this detail, but the practical side of things, like this boy was in a far off country in the 1st century. Like, how do you travel home? Travel nowadays is not cheap. Like, how do you get like, how do you travel across the world? Like, it had to have taken a ridiculous amount of drive and like motivation for him to get out of that pig pen, somehow just like leave his slave owner and return home. And so that is just like what I want to leave y'all with tonight, is just the encouragement, like we talked about earlier, to like press in those trials and to not just try and escape them, but to like let the hunger and the emptiness that you feel from something that you so desire, like rather than being content to just like seek that thing and get it and wallow the rest of your life in a pig pen eating trash, like let that hunger drive you out of the pig pen and back into the Father's arms.
Yes, dude, that is so good. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of forgot what you had done the word on from the last time we tried this. But as soon as you said prodigal son, I was like, oh yeah, I remember exactly what he was talking about. And again, like something from that story that isn't often like the main point when you hear teaching on the prodigal son. So just a super cool part of that story that you highlighted for us, Andrew. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course.
That's going to do it for us this week, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the More Than a Mission podcast. We will see y'all next week. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you, guys.
We want to thank you for listening to More Than a Mission. For more information and to keep up with our ministries, follow us on social media at More Than a Mission Podcast, or email us directly at morethanAmission@outlook.com.